Hey, Eric.
Hey, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Alrighty, guys, the city of Sandusky is live.
Can I have somebody make a motion to open the meeting, call the meeting to order?
I move that we call the meeting of CRC to order.
I second.
Thank you. Okay, first and foremost, just want to take this opportunity to thank the Community Relations Committee for their nomination for chair for the current term, and to congratulate Ms. Dr. Valerie Cruz on her vice chair role. I thought we'd start this meeting this month by reviewing the mission of the Community Relations Commission. One, that the commission was established in 2017 to recommend ways and means of initiating and improving city government programs designed to eliminate discrimination or to remove the effects of past discrimination. So in terms of that, that is our mission. And I thought perhaps maybe this year we could revisit that with new business further down on the agenda and decide where we come into this conversation regarding the national conversation around some of the issues that have come up in our nation, actually, but more pertaining to our city and making sure that we maintain our positive relationship with our government officials and our law enforcement agencies so that we can continue on a path to prosperity. So, current business. I wanted for the commission to have maybe an update on where we are and the impact of the COVID pandemic on the city of Sandusky. In terms of employment, maybe health, housing or anything, what's been the implications for COVID on our city?
And I just wanted to make sure, I wasn't sure specifically through Dr. Cade, whether there's a staff person that wanted to give that update, or if you were looking for me to give an update. I'm happy to give an update, but I wasn't sure if someone else was prepared based on the agenda to speak to that.
Mm-hmm. I don't have anyone in mind, but I know that we had some job cuts at the city department. I'm assuming that's to COVID. Yes. I know that, so I'd like to know overall, like what implications has it had for our city? Have we seen, I know that I get the report from Commissioner Shade in terms of community spread, but overall implications for our city.
Yep, I can speak to that. And if anyone else who is attending from the city wants to add anything, feel free. As far as the public health aspects of COVID, we have worked very closely with the health department and Firelands, the health system, and have really followed their lead as well as the governor's lead as to what we're doing. So the impact that we have dealt with outside of working with them on a case-by-case basis as things have come up has been the financial aspects or the impact on our overall budget and the local economy as it relates to COVID. Sandusky is one of the hardest hit cities in the country on a per capita basis. And the reason for that is really twofold. The first is that Ohio cities are amongst the hardest hit because of the way that we do taxation. So Ohio cities are heavily reliant on local income taxes as the main source of revenue, where, for example, in the neighboring state of Michigan, municipalities rely on property taxes, and there's only like 15 cities in the entire state of Michigan who are grandfathered in that actually charge a local income tax. And the benefit of income taxes is that when times are good, they tend to rise faster than property taxes. The downside of income taxes as a main revenue source is that they're collected on basically 30 to 60 day increments from when the income is generated. And when we get, at least from withholding, which is the vast majority of our income taxes, from paycheck withholdings, they decline really quickly when the economy goes down. And so, for example, we know the schools will be hard hit eventually, but because they're property tax reliant, which is only collected twice a year, they will be more slow to feel the impact on their budget. Whereas Ohio cities started immediately within 30 to 60 days as to when unemployment ticked up to feel the impact in our budget. So I think our local income taxes are down approximately 14% to this point this year as to where they were last year. But the second part, so that's why Ohio cities are heavily impacted by COVID. Why Sandusky in particular is heavily hit is because we are very reliant, in addition to income taxes, on admissions taxes and lodging taxes. Admissions taxes are 98% paid by patrons of Cedar Point, and then lodging taxes obviously are driven by Cedar Point and other tourist destination activities. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to welcome tourists this year. Cedar Point has been open a lot fewer days and with a lot more limited capacity on the days that they are open. So our admissions tax receipts are down 92% compared to this time last year. And I know that I think our lodging taxes are down. I want to say it's somewhere around like 77% from where they were at this time last year. So the net effect of that is that we expect our budget to be about $7 million off on what was supposed to be a $24.9 million budget. And so we've slashed spending. To Dr. Cade's point, we've gone from 253 full-time employees working for the city to about 226 full-time employees working for the city. About half of that was done through a round of layoffs that we did that were spread across all departments, but for police and fire were not impacted by that, but every other department was impacted in some way by those cuts. And then the rest of the other half of that has been attrition, so that as employees have left the city naturally, we've not been replacing those positions unless we absolutely have to. And we have had a modest amount of impact. I think we're down 1 firefighter right now, and then 3 or 4 police officers. And again, at some point, we'll have to fill some of those positions if it becomes critical, but we're trying to put that off to save dollars. We've also dramatically cut our capital budget spending this year to save additional dollars, and our program spending, all of that combined has received about an 80% cut this year. And we know that next year is going to be very difficult too. The good news is, from a financial perspective, is that we were actually in very good shape going into this year. We had a record reserve of around $5 million. And we're going to deficit spend this year by approximately about $2 million. In addition to that, we have also received some stimulus funding, particularly for public transportation, as well as for our police and our fire departments. And then finally, we were able to take some foundation dollars that we receive annually from Mylander, which typically goes into our capital budget for Parks and Recreation. It has to go into Parks and Recreation spending. And we're able to fund some of our recreation salaries this year, so that and that's a temporary year to year to put that into people as opposed to the playground updates that you've seen throughout the city over the last few years. So we're weathering the storm. We know that next year is going to be hard hit as well. There's still a lot of uncertainty as it goes to COVID, but our goal is to do what we can with the existing cuts to not have to drop more staff other than through attrition. We don't know that that's the case yet, and our budgeting will start in October and November for next year, which is a little earlier, but we're just trying to give ourselves a little more certainty. So that's been the impact on COVID. Dr. Cade, I know you mentioned some additional things like housing, and I will say that we have dramatically decreased things like code enforcement to be able to make sure that we're not putting people who are already in difficult financial positions into worse positions. We're slowly starting to bring those activities back, but we're being very sensitive in how we do it. That does also extend to water shutoffs. We had postponed any water shutoffs for a long period of time. We recently, over the last 2 weeks, have brought those shutoffs back, but we've raised the limit at which point we will actually do water shutoffs, and we've given people a year to get onto a payment plan so that the vast majority of people should not have to deal with shutoffs. We're giving them time to pay off those delinquencies, but we have to run the system responsibly, start to have some accountability within that system. So we've tried to find some balance between, doing water shutoffs again, but doing them sensitively and giving people both time and more cushion so that those who are in difficult situations can continue to receive water services during difficult times. I'm happy to answer any other questions, but that's the basic update that I would give with COVID as of today.
Thank
Eric,
you so much.
Eric, I don't know if you can answer this question, but how do the recent personnel changes at the health department affect the city of Sandusky and the services that the health department can provide to the city?
So through the chair, what I would say is we have not seen any impact. We have 2 to 4 people at the health department that we're dealing with on a very regular basis as we have issues either within our own staff at City Hall or things that happen to come up in the community as it relates to housing or cases or spread. And those 2 to 4 people have remained in place and haven't raised concerns with us about what those personnel changes will have an impact. So we haven't felt that impact yet, but that's certainly something we can monitor or take feedback on if others are perceiving that there is an impact on services or their ability to monitor the situation beyond what we have seen directly through our contacts.
Eric, in terms of COVID testing, what's our city's vision for that? Many cities around the nation have ramped up their testing, particularly in disenfranchised communities that have been impacted more disproportionately because of the virus. What are we doing here in Sandusky?
So we have worked through our planning department to work with the health department, who was pushing out those tests. They had asked us for locations and partners, particularly folks who are working with disenfranchised communities through things like food drop-offs and pickups, et cetera, to make testing available. And so I know we did that at some places. We also had heard some concerns, though, from some members of the Black community who felt like had raised issues of previous public health issues in the past where there was discrimination against the Black community, or actually some misleading things that took place as to that. And so they didn't tell us not to do that because they understood why we were testing, but they told us to be very sensitive in how we approached the community as it related to the testing being available. And so we took that advice, but I'd have to have planning here to give a very specific update. And maybe Mackenzie, we can talk to Greg after this meeting and provide updates as to how that happened. But we were working with the health department, providing them with sites and potential nonprofit partners who would be good to get more tests in the hands of more people who wouldn't maybe naturally know where to go or be reached through traditional media channels for the health department.
Well, thank you. I think perhaps the faith-based community would be good partners in organizations like the NAACP because they are trusted. There is a heightened sense of distrust in communities of color because of historical and previous issues that have happened around pandemics and community spread diseases. So that would be good. I would like to get an update on that if possible, Mr.
Yep,
Woods.
and I think that, and your advice is really well taken, and we will follow up with we'll start with Daryl, and then we'll figure out the faith community. I know that what had gone from a testing surplus has become a testing shortage again, and so we'll have to make sure that tests are available at the health department. But Mackenzie and I will put our heads together after this and start with Daryl, get in touch with the right people, and any inroads that you can help make, Daryl or anyone else, with the faith community, we'll reach out, and if testing is available, we'll make sure that we're really pushing that message out so that people know that they have access and we can get that done.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Kate?
Yes.
If I might comment on that, when the tests were made available earlier this year for the Erie County Health Department, we did recommend to a lot of people to go ahead and get tested for the COVID-19. And a lot of people did go out to the Erie County Health Department and were tested. But I knew the tests were becoming, like Eric said, they were coming short. They kind of ran out. So we haven't been harking that message as much, but we definitely can put that message back out there if the testing is available to tell people to go out there and get retested.
Okay.
Again.
I'd like to see some testing done. Where's Erie County Health Department located? I don't even know where.
Superior Street.
Oh, it's
yeah.
here now? Okay.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Superior Street. Yes, on the west side of town.
Okay.
It's off of Doctor, through the chair, it's off of West Monroe near Lions Park, if you're familiar with that area.
Okay.
It's kind of it's an old factory that they purchased a portion of and converted. It is a little bit out of the way, but it is in town.
Okay. Thank you all. This was a very good update, Eric. That was very helpful. So do any of the other committee members have any additional questions regarding the impact of COVID on this Sandusky city? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Woopster. Let's move to old business. We'd like
Dr.
to
Vi,
Yes, ma'am.
it looks like Dr. Valerie had her hand raised.
Oh, okay. Okay, Dr. Val.
I had a question. Someone approached me about the water shut-off. Do you give the person a time on the shut-off of water since they're jumping into having to pay? Do you give them like prorated payments or can they arrange things like that?
Yes, and Mackenzie, I don't know, through Dr. Cade to Dr. Valerie, I have a summary of that in a manager's report from the city commission meeting. I don't have that information at the tip of my tongue. Mackenzie, I don't know if you're able to track that down and to email it.
I can
But my
forward it.
understanding- Okay, perfect. And my understanding was there is a notice provision, and I can't remember exactly how many, if it was 2 weeks or something along those lines, but we did give notice, and we did lift the cap. It used to be $100 that you would be shut off if you were over. I think we lifted that to $150. And we
Okay.
are giving the option for a one-time 12-month payment plan so that people
Okay.
can work with us over a 12-month period. But we'll send that information so that you have it and as you get
Thanks.
questions. So
Eric.
we're trying to do what we can to make sure that people have some cushion.
Eric, they've recently replaced meters in the city, water meters. Is that going to be a cost that's going to be transferred to the consumer? And is that something that's going to be tacked on to the consumer bills for their replacement of those water meters?
Through the chair, not specifically. So anytime that there are incurred costs through the water system, certainly like any business, rates will eventually, our costs will eventually be passed on through our rate increases. But we've had to make some difficult rate increase decisions based on EPA mandates in the last 4 or 5 years. We actually, going into COVID, I don't know how COVID will impact this for sure yet, but going into COVID, we were at a place where we felt like we could relax rate increases for the next several years because we'd caught up with those EPA mandates. But we're not charging people for their new meter. There may be some issues as new meters read more accurately, and people had gotten used to inaccurate billing, which could have been in their favor or our favor. We don't know. You know what I mean? So I think there will be some adjustments, but there's no specific cost being passed on because we have new meters. But people will get a much more accurate reading because the meters that had been broken or were older were probably not reading as accurately as they could be, and the new ones won't read very accurately.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have any additional questions regarding the impact of COVID on Sandusky City?
No.
Okay, so then I'm going to move to old business. And next on our agenda is an update on the police chief hiring process.
So through the chair, I can speak to that as well. The committee that was appointed by the Sandusky City Commission and is chaired by Commissioner Naomi Twine has passed. So they've gone through their process. I believe we had 11 total candidates. I believe they interviewed 3 finalists for the position, and they have recommended per the charter 2 of those candidates for me to review and to choose a finalist, which is how the role works. And we do have a meeting scheduled with Daryl, with myself, Chief Orzek, and Commissioner Twine to make sure that we get the NAACP's feedback on particular questions that they want to be asked of the final candidate and concerns or just things that they want to see out of our next police chief. And so those interviews are scheduled to take, Daryl, I can't remember exactly when we're meeting, but I know my interviews with the police chiefs are scheduled for, I believe, September 22nd with the 2 finalists. One is an internal candidate, Scott Dahlgren, with the Sandusky Police Department, and the other is currently the deputy sheriff, Jared Oliver, who's actually a Sandusky resident who works for the Erie County Sheriff's Department. Those were the 2 that were the finalists. And again, I will interview them on the 22nd and hopefully make a decision. But we very much want the feedback of the CRC. And obviously, we're going to take that feedback of Daryl. And we do hope to ask specific questions recommended by Daryl. And so if anyone else has questions that they would like us to ask those or just qualities generally that you'd like us to make sure we're inquiring about before we make that decision, we'd be very happy to do it.
Eric, who are the people that are on this panel that are providing the interviews and the selection of the candidates for the chief's position? Are they members of organizations and leaders of organizations, or do you have any everyday citizens involved in this process?
I'm looking that up right now. Hold on one second. I knew the names, but it's been a while. And so, so the way that our charter works is, hold on one second.
Hey, Eric, I can answer that if you want.
Oh, good. I didn't know you were on, Chief. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so the selection, how it goes is the city commission president either does the search or has one of the commissioners. He appointed Commissioner Twine. Vince Rode was appointed by the Civil Service Commission. So the two city positions are one commissioner and one civil service commission representative. And then the other three are citizens. Mark Fogg, who worked with WLEC, been on the radio for 40-some years, was one of the citizens. Ed Window, who's been a lifelong resident, and Dr. Stephen Sturgill, who is, I think, chief of staff at Sandusky City Schools. So those were the five members of the committee, and those are strictly fall into our charter and how our charter has that committee.
Now,
formed.
you know, I noticed on those names that you mentioned that other than Naomi Twine, there are no people of color on this committee.
Vincent Rhodes.
Vince Rhodes is a black citizen.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So 40% are people of color. But certainly we want it to be as diverse as possible.
Okay.
And I do know that not
These
that
are citizens of the city of Sandusky. All of these are residents.
everyone is a resident of Sandusky. It has to be per the charter. And I know not that it matters specifically, but I do know that Dr. Sturgill is in a, has a biracial family. So that hopefully helps his perspective as well, as far as understanding some of those issues. And obviously serves a very diverse population.
I would, if I could just add something to that, I think Vincent Rhodes is a good choice on that committee. I know Vincent, and he will ask some tough questions as well. So, yeah, I like the committee.
I'm glad you do, Daryl, because I don't know him.
Yeah, I do. I know Vince. I know Vince very well. That's Michelle Rhodes. You know Michelle Rhodes?
No.
You don't know Michelle? Okay, that's her husband.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Woops. Any additional questions on the update of the police chief hiring? So you had one woman on the committee, that would be the Commissioner Twine, and the others were men.
That is true. Yes.
Okay.
And
Thank
I
you.
just want to be clear through the chair. That is entirely a city commission appointed. The staff is not necessarily, and not to say that they didn't make good choices, but if you do have concerns with that, it would be important for us to take those up through Mackenzie to the commission president.
I think Naomi can handle those concerns. I think Naomi has a voice. I'm sure she would use a voice from a diverse perspective.
I can only see a few people. I'm not sure who's actually on the call.
I can only see whoever's talking, so.
So wait, let me look. I just want to make sure. I wasn't sure if Naomi was actually on.
Yeah, I pulled up the people. I don't see her on.
I do see Commissioner Harris.
The initials of the people that are on flash across the bottom of my screen, but only when someone's speaking do I see their picture.
Yeah.
Okay. So we do have Blake, if he wants to speak on behalf of the commission. But that and our law director, Justin Harris, is also on. But I think your points are well taken, and we can take those back, and Blake can do the same, and we'll make sure Naomi gets those as well. But you're right. I do think that we want to make sure that our committees are not, we want to make sure our committees are representative of Sandusky, not only from a racial perspective, but an economic perspective and a gender perspective as well. So we appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so update from our city manager on how is all of our projects going. There was a lot going on. You've been giving us an update since you sat down, haven't you, Eric?
That's okay. That's why I'm here. That's why I get the big bucks, right? So through the chair, just a general update on the city. We knew going into 2020 that it was going to be a big year in Sandusky. We had no idea exactly how this year was going to turn out, but we are very proud of many of the things that are taking place in the city. Obviously, last year we had debuted our city hall, but going into this year, we're about to open the new Cedar Fair and Bowling Green State University School of Resort and Attraction Management, which will bring a new higher education presence into the city, and hopefully we can grow that presence with BGSU over time. We're very proud of the work that Dr. Cade and Dr. Sanders and the schools have done to bring 2 new elementary schools to Sandusky this year, and we've tried to support those projects, which are other major investments happening in Sandusky's neighborhoods. The Cedar Point Sports Center, an indoor 120,000 square foot sports recreation facility that'll bring a lot more tourism to our area on a year-round basis, opened earlier in 2020. We debuted the new Jackson Street Pier and Shoreline Drive which are actually the largest projects combined at 17 million that the city has undertaken in the city's history. And those have been very well received. And we've seen it's brought a new crowd and a diverse crowd down to downtown Sandusky in kind of a shared public space atmosphere. And then Cedar Point was supposed to be celebrating its 150th anniversary this year, which was going to bring the eyes of the state and the region and the country to Sandusky and be a year-long celebration. So we fully expected this year to be a really joyous year where we are debuting new projects and continuing momentum on existing projects. Unfortunately, obviously, a lot of that got derailed by COVID, but we're doing what we can to make the most of the year. The BGSU school will still open. The sports center is now active. I know Sandusky City Schools can't wait to actually welcome students to those new schools as soon as the public health situation allows. But we're doing what we can in spite of our budget challenges to make sure that we keep our priority projects going. We continue to plan for the new Justice Center project, which we're evaluating for costs right now, but hope to be able to announce something in the next month or two as to how to get that going. Our neighborhood initiative continues to move full steam ahead as we make improvements to Sandusky's neighborhoods and housing stock. We had to reduce the amount of some of those programs, but we have not eliminated any of those programs, including for our housing. And then we continue to really prioritize the Sandusky Bay Pathway, as well as creating neighborhood linkages to the Sandusky Bay Pathway. We did just recently announce a bike trail that will go all the way through J.C. Park, starting near Columbus Avenue and working its way all the way through to Milan, which will eventually connect up with our improvements to Warren Street, which are being engineered right now, which will take that street, which is one of the worst shape in the city, and from Shoreline Park all the way to Monroe, repair that, and we'll add a connection that will eventually connect to that J.C. Park. So that'll be a neighborhood connector trail that goes all the way from the railroad tracks to the lake through the heart of Sandusky's neighborhoods. So we're trying to keep projects on track. We're doing what we can. We are in a difficult budget situation. We probably will be for 2 to 3 years, but we're trying to continue to make projects, continue to make priority projects go, and we're trying to keep important programs alive and continue to deliver basic services. We have an update that we're giving to our finance committee, not this Friday, but next Friday, talk about our 5-year financial forecast to give them a sense of what we actually have some outside help. We got a grant to bring on an outside consultant that's helping us understand the impact that COVID will have, not only on this year's budget, but our budgets over the next 4 years. And so we're really hopeful that that information will help guide the commission as they make difficult decisions as we go into next year's budget and beyond. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Eric, with all the improvements and expenditures in the budget that you're talking about, I would really hope that the city has plans to keep as much of this business and activities with local companies as possible to keep the money in the community. I notice a lot of times that we have a tendency to go to people in Cleveland and Toledo and vendors of that sort and take the money out of the city to construct and improve our city. And I want to know that we are assured that as much of this business as possible is being kept local.
Yeah. And so what I would say to that, sir, through the chair, is that we're absolutely trying to do that. When we bid out really large projects, oftentimes there aren't local general contractors that necessarily have the capacity. But what we're finding, and the schools are in a very similar situation with the schools, is that they're using very long lists of local subcontractors. And we actually just posted on Facebook for the Bowling Green project because somebody complained that you had a Cleveland contractor who was the general on that. But I believe we had a list of 9 local subcontractors who are doing huge portions of that project underneath that general. So we are doing what we can to encourage local workers, but it isn't always easy to find them as the general. And we do have pretty strict rules that we have to follow in picking general contractors, but we do everything we can to encourage local subs. And the construction climate has been so good that we're hearing from our local construction firms, even in COVID as of right now, and I hope that that can continue into next year, that they're very, very busy. And so our hope is to keep those folks busy. And so some of the folks that were coming in from out of town were just because we didn't have enough local construction workers to take on all the street work that was, if you think about it, you had the sports center that was booming, you had the Sandusky City Schools projects that were booming, you had our City Hall project going, you had the Bowling Green project going, you had the Jackson Street Pier and Shoreline Drive projects going. Someone said to me that there was probably more construction in Sandusky in the last 5 years than there'd been in the last 50 years. And we had a smaller construction industry that was probably set up more for that last 50 years than the last 5. So we're hoping to see, and we've seen some of those local contractors step up and learn on some of these bigger jobs so that they can become a general in the future. But your point, again, Mr. Harris, is well taken, and we'll continue to do what we can to build the capacity of local subcontractors and general contractors and to attach them to the work that is taking place in the city.
Thank you.
And just comment on, and just add
go ahead.
what Eric had indicated, the system is designed for us to give preference to the local folks. We have to competitively bid and send out requests for proposals. We do give a local preference or discount when we do the scoring. So local contractors and industries get an actual advantage. But, you know, our goal is to encourage as much participation as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Does anyone have any additional questions? I think, Mackenzie, my initial question for this bullet point was an update on the city manager's position. Eric, I thought I read something in the newspaper regarding your time here and some other city seeking your bid for city manager. Is there anything going on with that in terms of our current city manager staying or leaving us? That's what I'm interested in.
I was through the chair. I am ongoing. I'm one of 3 finalists for the city manager position in the city of Ann Arbor, Michigan, where I attended law school. I did all-day interviews actually in Ann Arbor yesterday, and their city council meets on Monday to select finalists. I think it's probably unlikely that that's going to work out, whether that's on their end or my end. And what I can say is I am not actively looking for other positions. That position presented itself to me because a recruiter reached out to me, and because of my tie to Ann Arbor, because I haven't looked at any other position since I've been in Sandusky for about 6.5 years. In fact, I hadn't even updated my resume since I took the Sandusky job. I thought it might be good to learn more about that process, and I've enjoyed participating in it, but I don't think that's going to work out. And I'm not out there actively looking or shopping. You know, I enjoy Sandusky. I'm from Sandusky. We've got a lot of family nearby in Sandusky. So it would take a really good opportunity to pull me out. But I appreciate the question, and I promise you that for as long as I am here, I'm going to continue to serve the city every day as well as I can. And then it will always have a great place in my heart. But I appreciate it. I'm happy to answer any further questions with that. But I don't think Ann Arbor is likely to work out for a variety of reasons. But that being said, you know, I've appreciated that going through that process because it had been so long since I had done that. And you know, again, we'll take it day by day from here.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Wooster. We would hate to lose you. You have been invaluable to this city and your vision, and we appreciate you. So we wish you the best for you and your family, but we'd like to keep you here. Okay.
Well, it's greatly appreciated, and I thank you for that.
Okay. Okay. So the next in terms of our agenda, does anyone have any additional questions for Mr. Wooster? So I'll move to the next agenda item, which is the state of race relations. So we know that we've had an insurge of conversations around our nation regarding race relations. I know that there was a demonstration on 250 at one point regarding the whole Black Lives Matter movement. And I don't know where we are as a city and what role issues have come up, you know, any issues with our law enforcement, updates on our Water Street project, but really what's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement. I know that other cities around the nation, some states have even established commissions on race and social justice to take a look at systemic racism and institutional racism as it's affecting the overall quality of life for different people. So I'd like to know where we are in terms of City of Sandusky.
So I can start through the chair and speak to that from a few different areas. But if anyone else from the city, whether that's Commissioner Harris or Chief Orzech or anyone else wants to weigh in, please do. But one of the things I am proud of is the diversity in Sandusky. And while it is very imperfect and we have our own history of discrimination and racism in Sandusky and segregation in the larger region of Erie County and Greater Sandusky, I do think we've tried to work hard over the last several years, not only with the police department, but a lot of that with the police department, to build up better race relations. I know Daryl and his work with the NAACP has been really important to that. I know the reformation of this commission and kind of restating it was a big part of that. We've worked very hard to diversify our workforce at the city. I know Chief Orzech's done a really good job of that in the police department. We've also, in sort of other community-facing departments, including our code compliance division, diversified that department. Our recreation staff has been diversified. Leaders in key positions. We hired a diverse fire chief. We hired a diverse law director. Unfortunately, one of those retired and the other one had a lucrative opportunity in the private sector, although we got him back at least on a temporary basis. But we have worked hard at the highest level of the city and at the entry level of the city to create more diversity on our staff. And I think that has paid off. I think the work that Chief has done as it relates to community policing, not just in the division of community policing, but with every officer, allowed us, as those national issues have taken place, to have better outcomes in Sandusky. You mentioned the rally or the march that went down 250. Both Chief Orzech, myself, and several other officers and city staff participated in that rally. There was an additional rally that I know Daryl was at that following weekend on the Jackson Street Pier, both of which were peaceful, and both of which, while it included constructive criticism of things that we could do, it also talked about how the situation in Sandusky and Erie County was better because we do have proactive police departments that do communicate and are transparent. And again, that's not to say that we're perfect. We know we're far from perfect, but I do think we've made good strides that have allowed us, knock on wood, to have better outcomes thus far. And then one thing I will say that I have done is I penned a column in the Sandusky Register a few months ago that talked about the diversity of city boards and commissions. It talked about the diversity of city staff and school staff, and it talked about the diversity in the boards of the nonprofits throughout the city. And while that was a difficult conversation, it did actually help, and particularly the Erie County Community Foundation Board has really stepped up and is working now to diversify their board, which right now does not have people of color on it. And they've asked for each board member, as we have 3 new vacancies, to submit at least 2 names, hopefully of diverse people that can help them to do that. And I want to make sure that we take that conversation beyond just the foundation's board itself, but then eventually to all of the nonprofits that the foundation funds to encourage them to diversify their own boards. And so while we've got a long way to go, I feel like those are the steps that we've taken. And then the last thing I'll say, and Blake, jump in if you're listening, is Blake Harris has been working really closely with myself, and we've taken that to the rest of the city commission about the idea we do not, while we have a legacy of streets in Sandusky that are named for historic figures, many of whom are white, many of whom participated in things like segregation or slavery before they were made illegal, we do not have a name of a street designated towards a person of color who's a civil rights leader. And so he's going to push that in our commission to find the right street. And I don't want to get into the details of that today, but while that would be a symbolic gesture, we think it could be an important one. And it really has been Blake who's led that conversation. And hopefully that'll get to the broader community and the commission soon. But it's something that staff has been very supportive of and appreciates his leadership on that issue.
They have, you forget about Ashburn Drive. Reverend Ashburn was a key figure in our movement here in Sandusky. Also, there's a segment of the community that everybody seems to leave out. You have Blue Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, but nobody remembers Gray Lives Matter. And senior citizens are not represented on these committees. And I don't think that there's a proactive effort made to locate seniors that might be interested in participating in some of these decision-making boards that are being formed within the city of Sandusky.
That's good. It's a point. Your point is well taken.
Okay, thank you.
Now, through you, Dr. Cade, I would like to just piggyback off of City Manager Eric Woopser. I was actually fortunate enough to be one of 3 people, along with Bill Hill and Devin Johnson, to put together that event that took place on the Jackson Street Pier, in which we called Sandusky United. In many ways, I believe it to be it was a very successful event. And, in addition to that, I'll speak to a few things. I know that one of our fellow officers, Ronte, is actually one of the community impact officers, if I'm not mistaken now. So I know that's one of the recent changes that has been made. And to speak again a little bit to what Eric had mentioned, and as he said too, I won't allude to too many details prior to taking it to before our city commission. But I will say that we certainly are tossing around the idea of dedicating one of I would say a street name in a very recognized area, to say the least. So hopefully with the help of others and our my fellow commissioners, that's something that we'll be able to bring to fruition. As far as like a lot of our committees, I know one thing that stands out is our steering committee. I know a lot of our city planners and other city officials have really made it a point to reach out to me to sort of find ways in which we could diversify many of these committees. And last but not least, and Eric has actually sat in on some meetings as well. And I won't, and again, I won't release too many details because one of our, I guess, coming out parties, for a lack of better words, will, I believe, be on the 20th or 21st. But myself and many other leaders, which is a very diverse group of people, we are actually exploring ways and have formed a group to, I guess, basically spur, the minority business development here locally. And that's working with local leaders, Sandusky City Schools, our city staff, because what we've realized over time is there certainly is an informational gap. So whether that's, just small business owners and or those looking to aspire to be small business owners, we are also hoping to just draw leaders and as well as, again, kind of bridge that informational gap, for a number of reasons. So I guess that being said, that's all that I have for, any updates. So please, if you have any interest, I would be more than happy to share further details, with you all personally, and or, you can just look for much of that information to come out here over the next 2 to 3 weeks. So.
Well, thank you. Does anyone have any additional questions for our city manager or any of our commissioners regarding the state of race relations in the city of Sandusky? And
Chairperson?
Yes.
If I could just say, I would like to just echo a few things. When we say Black Lives Matter, I think that's very important. And I know Tony alluded to that we have Blue Lives Matter and Gray Lives Matter. But the issue is Black Lives Matter. Too many times we push the issue of blackness to the back. And it seems like it's confrontational, or it's, it tends to insult some people when we say Black Lives Matter. But here in Sandusky and all across this nation, we have to say Black Lives Matter. And we don't need to go somewhere else. We don't need to go that all lives matter. We don't need to go that blue lives matter, because of course blue lives matter, of course all lives matter. But the problem is in America and here in every city that we live in, too many times policies have shown that Black lives don't matter. So as a Black man, as a citizen of Sandusky, I'm proud to be from Sandusky. I think we are going in the right direction. I commend Chief Orszag and the police department and the city manager and the commissioners and just every citizen of Sandusky to working together that we don't have the problems that we're seeing on our TV every day. But we have to confront the problem. And the problem is that America has shown that Black lives don't matter. So we have to be able to say comfortably that Black lives do matter. And if a person has a problem with saying Black lives matter and they don't have to go to someone else, then that's a problem. So
Darryl, I agree with you, but change doesn't come from comfort. Change comes from making people uncomfortable. And the
Of
only way
course.
we can deal with this issue is to speak about topics that are uncomfortable and talk about them in a rational and calm manner. So if it makes you uncomfortable to say Black Lives Matter, that's good. But it also means that you have to take that conversation into a situation where the comfort levels are not always a status quo and level, that it has to be a situation where change comes from uncomfort, not change comes from a comfortable situation.
Exactly. I agree with that 100%, Tony.
No,
Me too.
I thank you, Mr. Murray, and I thank you, Mr. Harris. I think, it is documented the disproportionate impact that structural institutional racism has had on Black lives. And it's not just in the area of law enforcement. We can look at every sector of our society. And I think that one of the things that the COVID impact has shown us, it has revealed a lot of the disproportionality in our country. We see that certain communities have been hit harder by the pandemic, and a lot of that has to do with some of the residue of other areas in life, medical coverage. People of African American descent tend to have less quality of healthcare availability, and so they use different venues like the emergency room instead of having a family doctor who most people in middle class like myself, we go to our family doctor on a regular basis for preventive care. So the pandemic is showing us that race, income are things that have implications for less treatment. So thank you for helping us to clarify why it's important to reiterate that Black Lives Matter. Anybody else have any additional questions or feedback regarding our city's update on the state of race relations? Okay, any issues in law enforcement have been brought to your attention, Mr. Murray, or anyone that we should know about at this point? I know that you guys were having a conversation about something that had taken place, I think, on Kelly's Island. Anything locally that we should know about as a commission?
No, not right offhand. No.
Okay, all right. So I think Eric gave us the update on the Water Street project, or do we need more information on that? Anybody? Are we good with that? Okay, I'm going to move on to new business. So I thought in terms of some of our new business, and this would be an opportune time for all community relation members to really begin to think about what are the issues we need to focus on to ensure that the mission and vision for the Community Relations Committee is on it. I started the conversation by stating the mission is that the Community Relations Commission was established in 2017 to recommend ways and means of initiating and improving city government programs designed to eliminate discrimination or to remove the effects of past discrimination. So that's the purpose and the mission of this CRC. So what is it that we need to focus on? And this is not for us to answer today, but it's to take an opportunity to reflect. What are the training, the information that we may need as a board or as a commission to really advance the mission of this organization? I think we have a nice diverse group of people with different backgrounds, races, gender, age span here that can bring forth what the concerns might be that we should focus on. I think the whole conversation around race relations in our country, it's a conversation, and there's been a lot of movement around marches, but I don't want to see the conversation disappear. I want to see some outcome, something come to fruition because of the conversation. So what are the policies in place that protect the civil rights of the citizens in Sandusky, all citizens in the Sandusky, Black, white, indifferent, Asian, it doesn't matter. And what are some of the past discriminations? Because history has a tendency to repeat itself. So if we're not clear on what the history of Sandusky City has been in terms of its interactions with different sectors of our community, then we'll fall into the habit of having those historical things repeat themselves. So these are questions that I would like for members of this Community Relations Commission to think about. And I would like to revisit this conversation at our next meeting and to really begin to think about what it is we should be focusing on, because coming together once a month to ask for an update from the law enforcement and from the city manager is not a proactive stance. This CRC has a mission. What is it that we need to be doing to uphold that mission in a proactive manner? And then what is it that we need? What information or training do we need in order for us to ensure that the integrity of what the mission was stating, that we're actually upholding that? So that's what I would like for us to have an opportunity to think about. Does anybody have any feedback, any suggestions, comments regarding the new business?
Mr. Chairperson, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I was thinking about those thoughts as well, leading up to this meeting, and I thought, what can we actually do? And if you look at, the commission as a whole, we have a lot of people in a lot of different walks of life, myself in juvenile justice, you in the schools, Mr. Murphy, and his civic organizations. There's a dearth of minority candidates in law enforcement, not necessarily here in the city of Sandusky, but what can we do proactively to turn that around? And I know that the community has a distrust of the police, but what can we do to actually drive it? Do we have to do something in the schools? Do we have to do something in civic organizations to say, it's a good field, you should go into the field? We need more diversity. It will help, whether it be women or minorities. Having more diversity will help some of these problems that we see every day. So I don't know what we can do as a commission to try and do something proactively to do a drive to get people to apply or at least get interested in it. But that's all I have.
Thank you, Taylor.
Taylor, it's a combination thing with the schools and the religious community and things like that. But I think that we as a commission need to become more visible in the community so people know that they can reach out to us and come to us with problems. As it stands right now, we're meeting quarterly, and we are not a visible entity in this community. I think we need to make ourselves more visible, and that way helping ourselves become more proactive and initiating commentary between the citizens of Sandusky and the other governmental agencies in Sandusky.
Thank you. I think, as I listen to you, Mr. Harris, one of the things that come to mind, and City Manager Awupsa, I think what I would have liked is I would have liked to know that, one, that we were, I would have liked to update on the hiring of a police chief before, as the process was underway. I would have liked for someone to have reached out to me and said, hey, we're in the process of hiring a police chief. As members of the community relation, this is a conversation. I would have liked a more proactive approach to the conversation and not an update after the process. So I'd like to see more of a proactive stance in terms of our interaction with government officials, not just for quarterly updates, but issues that pertain to, that may be more sensitive to issues that have come up. We've had plenty of conversations about law enforcement. I even spoke about my son being pulled over twice by the City of Sandusky Police. And I think that this issue is something that I would have preferred or liked in the future for the city to be more proactive with the CRC to have a conversation with us. Certainly, I think that, the NAACP has a proactive stance as a collect-all nonprofit agency that is nationally recognized. But if you put a community relations committee in place, then the city is saying that this is a partner. And so I would like in the future for us to be more proactive. Eric, did you hear that?
Yeah. And I think your point is well taken, Chair. I think it certainly wasn't intentional.
No, I don't think so.
No, I agree. And the search process has been complicated by COVID. We slowed it down by several months because of COVID. And that's not an excuse, but it's to say, I do think we should be more proactive. I think Daryl reaching out on behalf of the NAACP would have was helpful for us, and that's why we took that meeting right away when we had that interaction. And I think that's got to be a conversation both from the staff and the commission and then the committee that gets appointed, because we can all catch that and put that forward. And so what we'll do is talk internally about how to do that. And I agree, the more that we do proactively up front, the more trust that develops over time, and that the more faith that will be placed in the candidate that does emerge from that process. So it suits everybody well who participates, because you end up with a better situation, both in making the selection and then for the person who's ultimately selected to start with that blessing that would come from that process. So, hold us accountable, and we'll do what we can with that. We have not selected, or the city commission has not selected a fire chief council or committee yet, but that will probably be coming at some point early next year. And so maybe that's a good first test for us to make sure that when we go out and look for our fire chief, that we involve the CRC and the NAACP from the outset of that process and take your feedback into consideration. I know it's not quite as sensitive of a topic as police, but it is a charter position. And, it's a good way for us to begin that conversation with this committee, and I appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. I know that, you're a good person, Eric Gupta. I believe that with all my heart. I just, in terms of us being able to move forward, in terms of our work, one of the things that I am really adamant about is if this commission's mission, I plan to hold that to some level of fidelity in terms of my role. If I accept the leadership role, I expect to serve as a leader and to ensure that our work is done to the best of our ability as a committee. And understanding that community relations in the city of Sandusky, as a new resident with 2 years experience in this city, it's important for me to be involved as a citizen of this city. And to be concerned about all the citizens of this city, regardless of race or background. But this commission focuses on discrimination, so there must be some past history there of why this committee was formed. And that's one of the things that I have homework to do, is to find out why this commission was founded, so that I can have a better understanding of the work. Because I do believe, as a historian, that history does have a tendency to repeat itself if we're not proactive. We're continuing these important conversations. And that's just me as a person. So I think this was a very good start. I thank Taylor and I thank Anthony for the 2 suggestions. I did write down one, the increase in the number of people of color in law enforcement, and Anthony's suggestion about becoming more visible in the community. Other than that, does anybody have anything else that they would like to share? It is now 5 o'clock.
Dr. Vi,
Yes, ma'am.
we did not approve the minutes from March 11th, so if we could do that.
I sure can. Thank you, Mackenzie. I appreciate it. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from March the 11th?
Madam Chair, I, Darrell Murphy, will make a motion that we approve the minutes as read from our March 11th meeting.
Thank you.
I'd like to second the motion.
That was Anthony Harris. Thank you.
Thank you all.
And I guess I'm going to ask somebody to make a motion to adjourn.
I move that this meeting be adjourned at 5 o'clock, 5:02.
I second that motion.
And again, I'd like to thank Eric Gupta and Chief Orzak for giving us those updates and being a part of this meeting, and all of the members of this Community Relations Committee. I appreciate your time and dedication to our mission. Everyone have a great evening. Darrell Murphy,
Yes, ma'am.
I need to speak with you about a grant opportunity